Welcome to the Recover You podcast. I'm Kylene.
And I'm Patrick.
We are a couple in recovery
from sex addiction
and betrayal trauma. Together, we share our story to encourage you on your journey. It's here that we talk about sex addiction, betrayal trauma, mental, emotional, and physical health, faith, and anything and everything needed to recover you to your most authentic self that God created you to be.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pat, and I am here solo today doing the podcast. Kylene is actually not feeling well. She's actually in the room staring at me.
I was going to say, you're not totally alone.
Yeah, she's in there laughing. Did you hear her laugh? But anyway, so today I'm going to walk you through what I feel are the best ways to respond to your hurt or betrayed spouse or partner. You know, I'm actually speaking from experience on this, which I think everybody would understand. But the key thing that you're trying to think through as I give you these, and you may have others, but as I give you these, is betrayal is a loss of safety. So your partner is feeling, whether it's emotionally or spiritually or whatever it is, they're feeling unsafe. They have lost their sense of safety. And so safety is not something that you just get back in 5 minutes. Safety is not something you get back from a quick 15-minute conversation and then a brand new diamond ring. Safety is not reestablished that quickly. It's going to take time. It's going to take a long time. If you think about it, it takes, we've said this before, 3 to 5 years for you to heal from all the reasons why you were a sex addict and the traumas that you experienced that drove you there. When you hurt somebody, it can take a long time, because what goes into that is, what's their healthy state at the time of betrayal? What is it that you've done? Have you crossed some boundaries that in their mind they felt were non-negotiables, but now they're in this situation and it's really kind of tangled up because there's kids involved, and what might have seemed as a non-negotiable before they were faced with the actual situation, now they're thinking it through and going, well, can I live with that and everything? So it just takes, you got to remember that the whole process of healing in a relationship is about having the opportunity to reestablish safety. And so, buckle up, get ready, because it's a long process, and it's a worthwhile process. So, because through that process, you actually get the opportunity to provide that again, and in a way that's open and honest and vulnerable. And, being able to provide, safety to somebody or have somebody feel safe around you is actually a real gift. It's actually a real gift to bring to the table when you've learned how to do that, when you've been able to go through your own healing and approach situations in life and your partner with a strong recognition of what it is to provide safety for them. That is a gift, and it's not something that comes automatic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to walk through what I consider 4 things that are the best ways to respond to your hurt or betrayed spouse. So the first one, actually, let me run through the 4 of them, are approach with understanding. The second is to focus on your own healing. The third is to practice your responses. And the fourth is don't seek external validation from the betrayed or hurt spouse. So let's just kind of go in. In detail. So the first one is with understanding. I know for myself, I had been cheated on before. I guess you could argue, I had been betrayed. But I think my sense of betrayal differed greatly from Kylene's sense of betrayal. So, when I was discovered, I think I was approaching her responses through my own lens. And, if you think about it, my lens when I discovered that I was betrayed wasn't a healthy one. My own responses weren't a healthy one. And so in some ways, I was kind of hoping Kylene would respond the way I did. But it wasn't healthy. She's her own person. And so, understanding and trying to become more inquisitive about why your partner is feeling the way they are. What is it that betrayal felt like? It was really hard for me to hear Kylene say that betrayal was worse than being diagnosed with cancer. But that, to hear her say that actually really brought home, how devastating this was and how much this affected her world. So it was important for me to hear that, because then in my approach to my interactions with her, it gave me a little bit more gravity to think through. Why are you there? Why are you in this situation? Why is she upset at you over this? Is it because you lied to her? Is it because you manipulated her? Is it because and this is this is kind of par for the course for us sex addicts. We don't fully tell the truth. I remember Kylene would ask questions, have you ever looked at pornography? And it would be like, my version that I represented to her was like, maybe once when I was 14, or say I'm being silly, but it was such a minimal reality of what it really, really was.
Yeah, you kind of held a consistent, I'm here. You kind of held a consistent, like, it was an issue for me in my past, but it's not now.
Right.
And I even remember, I think, saying once, maybe multiple times, I'm so glad that's not an issue for you.
Yeah. And so, because I doubled down on that in our conversations, and what's interesting, it's like, in those moments, it shows you how broken I was. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was just trying to get to the point where I could fix it on my own. But because I had gone through that, when the truth actually came out, she was like, but we talked about it. Yeah. But, this or but that. And so, like, think about your own situations, and every betrayal story has, there's a lot of similar themes to them, but there's always some different details in there. If you said that you were going to stay in Vegas with your brother, but you ended up doing something else, those are manipulations. Those are lies, and that can really, really, rattle the emotional safety of your partner. So, when you have committed a really, really grievous error like this, and you just need to kind of understand what it takes for her, what it's going to take for her to kind of feel that safety again. I know that I actually listened to this podcast. It's called Betrayal. It's about these crazy stories of betrayal. But the one nice thing about it is it always kind of highlights, they talk about why it hurt them. And, there's, you always have this kind of this umbrella of, well, people cheat on people and you get over it and stuff like that. But it's not really that. It's just that the rug has been pulled out from under you, and you've got to understand what that feels like. Maybe somebody has decided that they're going to build a life with you, and they have given you children and all of these things, and now all of that's in doubt, and all of anything that they relied on is no longer true. Everything, I think a lot of us look at marriages as foundational. So the foundation is cracked, the foundation is leaking, and so how do you get there? And so one of the practical steps within just developing understanding is go ahead and ask. Hey, how did this make you feel? Because sometimes when they're in the point where they're yelling at you, because maybe early on, because they're really, really mad, it is going to calm down. But don't be afraid to seek that understanding and say, hey, how did it feel here? When they're in their moments and they're at their most vulnerable and hurt, and they're telling you how they feel, take the moment to listen. Try not to be defensive. And sometimes that's a little hard, because when you're in these tough moments, and we have our attachment personalities that we react out of, but they're telling you how they feel. So try to seek that understanding. Try to find a way to get in their shoes and see how it would feel. Don't say, well, I wouldn't have done it that way, or I wouldn't have reacted that way. Really try to feel what that would be, because you may just be saying that because you don't want to be in trouble, right? You may actually not be being authentic with who that is. So really take the time to understand, even if it means that you got to send letters to each other, send emails to each other, or stay up late talking, or whatever it is. If you're trying to seek reconciliation with this person, really seeking how it's affecting them is really, really going to be important. And a lot of times this is going to be a really hard one, because many of us come from families where this type of thing was not done in any sort of situation, right? So, how did cancer make Kylene feel? How did it feel when Keegan's girlfriend broke up with him? All of these different things, sometimes as a family, we won't ask questions. We'll just say things like, well, it's probably better off anyway. Or, no, you're healed now. That it is what it is, as opposed to saying, hey, how do you feel right now? Well, how can I react to you right now? So seeking understanding from the spouse or partner who's been betrayed by asking questions, not telling them what your opinion of the situation should be, but really taking the time to listen is going to be huge.
And not defending the behavior that caused the pain.
Right. I mean, I think as you get into addiction recovery, you can start to understand why you were there, but don't use it as I would really highly recommend, don't come home from group or therapy and be like, haha, this is why I did all of this stuff. Now you have to just accept it, right? Because I was hurt. There's the both and that exists in this. Yes, you were hurt, but and your behavior actually hurt the person that you loved. Number 2 is focus on your own healing. Relationships won't heal unless you do the healing work, the deep healing work. And really don't necessarily worry about what's going to happen with the relationship. So focus on your own healing, because as you heal, you're going to show up in the relationship a little bit differently. I remember one of the things that I said to myself early on, and I don't know how I arrived there, but I did. But it was essentially, I'm going to heal from this. I don't know whether Kylene and I will make it, but I at least want to get to a point where if we didn't make it, she would look at me and say, hey, I know you really, really tried. I was just hurt too much to be able to put this back together. So my healing was more dependent on me versus the actions of somebody else. So if your healing is always dependent on the actions of somebody else, those people can let you down, or those people may make a different decision. They may decide that they don't want to be with you. They may, and so it shouldn't derail your healing. Your healing should be based on your own healing. Focus on your own traumas, focus on your communication with those around you, focus on your ability to interact with the world in a positive way. When I talk about providing safety, when we get into sex addiction, via pornography or acting out or whatever, that we have a pornified view of the world. So as we heal, we lose that pornified view of the world. So we are just approaching the world in a more healthy way. We're providing safety for the people around us, no matter whom they are. And that's a really, really important thing. So what will happen, and this would never guarantee that a marriage will last or not, but the spouse is going to notice, the partner is going to notice as you begin to heal and really, really focus on your healing. Don't have your healing actions be dependent on their reaction to you. So if you're like really, really good at journaling or doing the work from group or whatever the therapist does for you, if you have a big fight and then you just stop doing those actions, well, that's not really, you're tying that to somebody else's reaction versus your own healing pattern.
You mentioned having a pornified view, and I was going to throw into, it's almost like a gamified view of life, because the mechanisms that you're utilizing and the pathways that you're utilizing is like this quick hit sort of no consequences, playing a video game sort of world in a sense. And so the reality of recovery is like you don't get rewarded for doing the right thing right away. You do have to experience the consequences. It does take a significant period of time. Like things don't get better just because you're doing the right thing quickly. So kind of keeping all of that in mind too when you're talking about consistently showing up in with compassion and with taking responsibility. That's something that there might be points in your own recovery where you feel so good, and then maybe you even feel frustrated at but she's not seeing it or she's not acknowledging it. She's seeing it. She's totally seeing it. But after betrayal, we have to sit back and watch and make sure that this is going to be a long-term life change, not just something you're throwing effort into for a period of time, because it's, burned once. We're really nervous about trusting too quickly. We have to see it play out. So just sort of recognize that as well, sort of within that concept.
Right. And we were talking about rebuilding safety. So, safety in a relationship is depth in the relationship. So as you build safety via your own healing and how you respond to things and how you respond to her when she's, activated, or when her nervous system has kind of fired, is going to grow the depth of that relationship. And that actually helps you gain a degree of influence on each other. That's really, really important. So, but until you engage in that healing, you can't grow the depth of the relationship. So once again, focus on your own healing. Get out there, treat it like a cancer, get after it. Make sure that this is something that you focus on, and you don't tie it to her reaction. The third thing is practice your responses. There's a great book out there called Help or Heal, and there's an acronym, AVR: acknowledge, validate, and reassure. So the nice thing about the book is you can go through and you can kind of write out your responses. You can because a lot of times we've never really figured out how to do this. This is something, once again, in our family patterns or whatever, we've just never learned how to approach somebody with empathy and acknowledge what they're feeling and validate. So, acknowledge the feeling, validate, and then reassure the person that you're actually, doing the work, or you're safe, or that's not how you feel that way, or maybe you've told them all the truth and that sort of thing. And so, make sure you practice your responses. I used to be a helicopter pilot in the Army, and we always practiced our emergency procedures in the simulator or on a very nice, clear day. And we did that on purpose because when you were in a tough situation at night with night vision goggles on, or whatever that was, and you had an emergency, it was already part of your response pattern. It was already in there, because what's going to happen is you want those responses, as maybe your limbic system starts to fire a little bit, that you can calm yourself quickly and get yourself back into those responses. Occasionally, women may say, or the betrayed partner may say, well, it just seems like it's robotic, the responses. They may seem like, I need genuine empathy here. I don't need to hear like a canned response. And I would tell you the acknowledge, the validate, and the reassure should be based on the dynamics of the relationship. If let's say when you talk to each other, you never use big words, but then all of a sudden you're using really, really big words, that might sound a little robotic, but it's actually okay if you're trying. Then that's an opportunity for you to come back to the spouse and say, hey, what didn't you like about this response? And the spouse says, well, it seemed a little bit robotic. And then you can tailor that response. But if your intent is always to acknowledge, validate, and reassure, then I think you're going to win there. Just don't be afraid to customize the approach a little bit to the dynamics of your relationship. The final one is don't seek external validation from the hurt or the betrayed spouse. Kylene was always very nice and very friendly, but she would be both nice and then activated and angry and upset. And sometimes that would all happen in about a 30-minute span. And, so while it was nice to get coins from her, while it was nice for her to say, hey, I'm proud of you, while it was nice for her to do those things, and it always made me feel good, I always tried to decouple my validation from her. Meaning that my motivation should have been more intrinsic or internal versus external. Maybe spend some time, in your groups where it's a really, really safe thing. You go, hey, I hit 30 days. And everybody goes, hey, great job. Nobody's going to get active. You haven't hurt those people in your group. So, but just remember that sometimes what will happen is a betrayed spouse will say, maybe one time they go, hey, congratulations, you're doing a really good job. Or the next time they say, I'm not going to congratulate you for not cheating on me for 30 days. And so that's a pretty standard kind of response. So really try to find a way to seek internal validation for yourself. You're tracking the days that you're in sobriety. You're hitting the milestones that you've laid out for yourself. You're setting those longer term goals. I want to get through these 10 weeks of Conquer. I want to spend 15 weeks in group, and I want to work with my therapist on some EMDR to process some of these traumas. And these things are really, really important to me. Because what may happen is, and I want to make sure I'm very careful about how I say this, when you're looking for when you're looking for external motivation, people will quote unquote let you down. And what I mean by that, I'm not trying to say that, well, the betrayed spouse has let you down because they didn't recognize you. I'm just saying you can't control them. You can't, always tell them when you want that. So don't use that as a source of moving your healing along. So 4 things: try to seek understanding why they're feeling the way they are. Ask questions. Get in there, make sure you really, really understand where they're coming from, why maybe an acting out pattern on an anniversary or a Christmas day or something was so hurtful to them. Really take the time to understand, and don't, when you're listening to those, to the answers to those questions or listening to those statements, don't be thinking about the next thing you're going to say. Really take the time to listen to those statements. Number 2, focus on your own healing. There's a great healing path out there with therapists and group. Really, really focus on that. I really see, sometimes I see men really dig deep and they go right into healing, and they really try hard with their therapist. Sometimes people dance around it, and it'll be something like, well, my wife doesn't really need to know, or my wife is not really pushing me. Well, why don't you push you? Why don't you go ahead and seek that healing? The third is practice your responses on when she's going to be activated, and using that AVR, once again, out of the book, Help Her Heal. And then finally, don't seek external validation from her. Seek that intrinsic motivation, that intrinsic validation from, and or external validation from group or a accountability partner or something like that.
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. She can rest her voice today.
Yeah.
So.
I think one of the phrases that kind of sums up everything you were just talking about is the phrase, listen to understand instead of listening to respond. And that will go a long way in partner communication.
And remember, every day is a new chance to choose health and freedom. Make that choice today, and we'll see you next week.
Woohoo! If you're listening to this, it means you've made it through an entire episode. Part of recovery is spending time engaging in healing and self-growth activities. We are thankful that you chose our podcast to be one of those activities today. Make sure you reward yourself for that accomplishment. If you've enjoyed this episode or this podcast, we would love to hear from you. Please take just a few moments to leave a rating and review, letting us know your experience with Recover You. We not only love hearing how these episodes are helpful, but ratings and reviews help others just like you who are searching for recovery information and support find the podcast too. We can't wait to hear from you. See you next week.